Good morning, students. I am Dr. Amitava Chatterjee. So, we shall be discussing diabetes mellitus, its epidemiology and prevention. So, as you already know, diabetes mellitus is one of the major public health problems presently in India. So, we shall be learning about its burden, epidemiological features, and regarding prevention and control. So, first, how to define diabetes? What is diabetes mellitus? So, diabetes mellitus is a metabolic cum vascular syndrome of multiple etiology characterized by chronic hyperglycemia with disturbances of carbohydrate, fat, and protein metabolism resulting from defects in insulin secretion, insulin action, or both, leading to changes in both small blood vessels, that is microangiopathy, and large blood vessels, that is macroangiopathy. So if we divide this definition into three parts, all the parts are important. Let us see. So what is diabetes? It is a metabolic cum vascular syndrome of multiple etiology, and it is characterized by chronic hyperglycemia with disturbances of carbohydrate, fat, and protein metabolism, which occurs due to defect in insulin secretion, insulin action, or both. And what is the result? It leads to microangiopathy and macroangiopathy. So this summarizes diabetes, the definition of diabetes mellitus. So what is the meaning of diabetes? The word diabetes mellitus, it means to pass sweet urine. Historically, once upon a time, diabetes was detected by actually testing urine. So how can we classify diabetes mellitus? It can be classified as type 1 diabetes mellitus, type 2 diabetes mellitus, gestational diabetes mellitus, LADA, number 5 MODY, or number 6 secondary diabetes mellitus. So what is type 1 diabetes mellitus? That is previously known as IDDM, or also juvenile diabetes, that is insulin dependent diabetes mellitus. What is type 2? Previously known as NIDDM, or the non-insulin dependent diabetes mellitus, or maturity onset diabetes mellitus. It is the commonest one, and actually our discussion will be mainly based on this type of the type 2 type of diabetes mellitus, because type 1 diabetes mellitus is rare and rarely occurs in India, mainly prevalent in the Scandinavian countries. Number 3 is gestational diabetes mellitus. Number 4 is LADA, that is latent autoimmune diabetes in adults. MODY is maturity onset diabetes of youth, which do have a very strong genetic predisposition. And last is the secondary diabetes mellitus, that may be due to some infection or drugs. So diabetes mellitus as a part of metabolic syndrome. So type 2 diabetes and cardiovascular disorders actually go hand by hand. So what is this concept of metabolic syndrome? It is the clustering of central obesity with several other major cardiovascular disease risk factors like hypertension, dyslipidemia, heart disease, type 2 diabetes mellitus. So central obesity, hypertension, dyslipidemia, heart disease, and type 2 diabetes mellitus, this actually makes up the metabolic syndrome, or the syndrome X. So coming to the burden of diabetes globally, this statistics is from the IDF Diabetic Atlas 2020. Estimated number of persons suffering from diabetes worldwide aged between 20 to 79 years. So you can see the projected rise of diabetes mellitus across the world or in Southeast Asia is a huge number. In Southeast Asia in 2017, it was 82 million, whereas it is projected that in 2045 it will become almost double, that is 151 million. Coming to the epidemiological part, so what are the agent factors responsible for diabetes mellitus? It may be pancreatic disorders, defect in formulation of insulin, destruction of beta cells, some medications like steroid, and some rare genetic syndromes. So, what are the host factors which are related with diabetes mellitus, occurrence of diabetes mellitus? That may be age, that may be gender, sedentary lifestyle, obesity, pregnancy as itself is a risk factor for diabetes, physical stress, surgery, trauma, and some genetic factors like HLA-DR3 and 4. So, what are the environmental factors responsible? This part is very important nowadays. Urbanization may be a cause, social class, diet, chemicals like alloxan, streptozotocin, cyanide, protein and energy malnutrition, viral infection like mumps, rubella, alcohol, smoking. So, this is a basic fact we should know, that is, in type 1 diabetes mellitus the body simply does not make insulin. Around about 5% of the diabetics are type 1, and in type 2 diabetes mellitus either the body does not make enough insulin or the cells begin to resist this. This is the majority of the diabetic population. So, what are the factors responsible for the rising diabetic epidemic? Genetic predisposition was one of the cause. Environmental factors, this is very, very, very important. So, sedentary lifestyle, change in food habits, stress of urban living, increase in population number, increasing aging population, high ethnic susceptibility. Diabetes is especially prevalent in the Indian subcontinent. So, what are the effects of urbanization? Why urbanization is causing diabetes? It may be due to consumption of excess calories, reduction in complex carbohydrate, with increased consumption of simple sugars and fat, availability of energy saving methods of transport and labor, hence severely reduced physical activity, increased level of stress. So, what are the modifiable factors or the unmodifiable factors which are responsible for diabetes mellitus? So, the unchangeable or the unmodifiable factors can be male gender, family history of diabetes mellitus, aging, viral infections. The modifiable factors may be dyslipidemia, hypertension, diabetes, and the preventable factors are obesity, smoking, alcohol, stress, sedentary lifestyle, food habits. Why are so many people suffering from diabetes mellitus in India? This is an important question. So, ethnic predisposition is one of the cause. Indians are centrally fat around the waist. Due to lack of exercise, economic growth, prosperity, changing in dietary habits, and adopting Western style fast food like pizza. So, coming to the natural history of diabetes, this is a very important slide. So, diabetes does not occur in one day. So, it takes time. So, if we see this graph, a person who is normal, initially going into the phase of impaired fasting glucose. What are these things we shall discuss later on. Then the patient is entering into the stage of impaired glucose tolerance. Then the patient is becoming frank diabetic and ultimately suffering from diabetic complication. The important point is that the risks of macrovascular diseases like cardiac problems, stroke, all these things actually start even before the patient has suffered or diagnosed to be having diabetes. It is starting from the period of impaired fasting glucose or during the time of onset of impaired glucose tolerance. And the risks of microvascular complication is starting when the patient is being detected as diabetes. The important thing to know here is that if we can detect a patient to be having impaired fasting glucose or just at the onset of impaired glucose tolerance, if we intervene through lifestyle and diet, so the patient may not progress to diabetes and may revert back to normal. So this is a very important cutoff part. And if we let the patient progress to impaired glucose tolerance or to have diabetes mellitus, the chances of avoiding the risks of macrovascular diseases decreases. So this is a very important cutoff level. So what are the diagnostic values? How to diagnose diabetes mellitus through blood test? So here we shall be discussing about the venous plasma values. So if the fasting blood sugar is less than 110 and the 2 hours postprandial blood glucose is less than 140, we shall stamp that patient as normal. If the fasting blood glucose level varies between 110 to 126, we shall say that the patient is suffering from impaired fasting glucose. And if the postprandial blood sugar is more than or equal to 140, we shall stamp that patient as suffering from impaired glucose tolerance. And if the patient has either any one of the two, maybe or both, maybe fasting blood glucose more than or equal to 126 or 2 hours postprandial blood glucose more than or equal to 200 or both, the patient will be stamped as suffering from diabetes mellitus. Another blood test which we recommend is the HB1C level, HB1A1C level, that is the glycosylated hemoglobin level. So for that is a average blood glucose over a period of 3 months. There the cutoff level is 6.4. If the patient has got HbA1c level more than 6.4, the patient is diagnosed as having diabetes mellitus. If the value varies between 5.8 to 6.4, then we say that the patient is in the pre-diabetic stage. And if it is less than 5.8 percent level, then the patient is normal. So what are the indications for testing for diabetes in asymptomatic undiagnosed individuals? Testing for diabetes should be considered in all individuals at age 40. This was previously 40, now it has been changed to 30 years and above, and if normal, it should be repeated at 2 years intervals. Testing should be considered at a younger age or to be carried out more frequently individuals who are obese, those who have strong family history of diabetes mellitus, especially first degree relatives, those with diabetes of developing during pregnancy, gestational diabetes mellitus, mother of a big baby at birth above 3.5 kilos. These mothers are prone for diabetes. Low birth weight child. This child can develop diabetes in future. Persons having a HDL cholesterol level less than 35 or a triglyceride level more than 200. On previous testing, patient was having impaired fasting glucose or impaired glucose tolerance. Are members of high risk ethnic population just like Indians. Patients suffering from polycystic ovarian disease. So what are the complications of diabetes? So the short-term effect of diabetes may be the patient suffers from diabetic ketoacidosis, recurrent or persistent infection including tuberculosis. Both hyperglycemia and hypoglycemia may cause coma. So long-term effects of diabetes, long-term complications of diabetes, it may be microvascular or macrovascular. So how to prevent diabetes? So we are mainly concerned with the prevention of diabetes in community medicine. Detailed treatment modalities of diabetes mellitus you will learn in general medicine later on. So what are the levels of prevention in type 2 diabetes mellitus. It may be primary prevention, secondary prevention, and tertiary level of prevention. So, primary level of prevention, it includes the activities aimed at preventing diabetes from occurring in susceptible populations. In secondary level of prevention, we stress on early diagnosis and effective control of diabetes in order to delay the progress of the disease and its complication. And in tertiary level of prevention, we prevent the complications and disabilities due to the diabetes. So coming to the primary level of prevention. So there are two strategies in primary level of prevention, that is the population strategy and the high risk strategy. So what is the population strategy? So here we stress on primordial prevention, that is the prevention of emergence of risk factors, and to maintain body weight through adoption of healthy nutritional habits and physical exercise. So, if a young child, if children maintain body weight through adoption of healthy nutritional habits and physical exercise, the chances of occurrence of impaired fasting glucose, impaired glucose tolerance, and subsequently that is definitely gets reduced. So, and what is the high risk strategy? For high risk, that is for the high risk individuals like having sedentary lifestyle, obese, taking alcohol, smoking, high blood pressure, elevated cholesterol, and triglycerides levels. Coming to the secondary prevention, that is to early diagnosis. So we have to screen the high risk population. It may be through population screening, selective screening, or opportunistic screening. So we screen persons over not 40, it will be 30 years. It has been changed to 30 years. Persons, obese persons with family history, women who deliver large babies, excessive weight gain during pregnancy, premature atherosclerosis. And what are the screening tests? It may be fasting blood sugar, it may be oral glucose tolerance test through which we detect whether the patient is having impaired glucose tolerance or not. It may be HbA1c level, that is the glycosylated hemoglobin level, or maybe urine test. And what is the treatment that we offer in secondary prevention? It may be diet, exercise, oral drugs, insulin, and self-care like foot care. Another screening tool recently developed, that is the Indian Diabetics Risk Score. How to interpret? If it is based on age, abdominal obesity, waist circumference, physical activity, vigorous labor, and family history. So if the score is below 30, there is low risk of developing diabetes. 30 to 50, it is medium risk, and in more than 60, it is high risk. Coming to tertiary prevention is through disability limitation and rehabilitation, maybe for physical, occupational, psychological. So coming to exercise in diabetes. So exercise in diabetes is based on the FIT principle. What is FIT principle? So for F, it is frequency of exercise. It should be at least 5 days a week or 150 minutes a week. What should be the intensity? It should be of moderate intensity. The type, it may be both aerobic with resistance exercise, and the time should be about 30 to 45 minutes per day, 150 minutes per week. So the World Health Organization recommends recommendations on physical activity for different age groups is like this. Children and youth aged 5 to 7 years should do at least 60 minutes of moderate to vigorous intensity physical activity daily. For adults aged 18 to 64 years should do at least 150 minutes of moderate intensity aerobic physical activity like brisk walking, jogging, gardening, spread throughout the week. At least or at least 75 minutes of vigorous intensity aerobic physical activity throughout the week, or an equivalent combination of moderate and vigorous intensity activity. And for older adults, the same amount of physical activity is recommended, but should also include balance and muscle strengthening activity tailored to their ability and circumstances. Coming to the diet in diabetes. So it comes under the medical nutritional therapy (MNT). It's an interactive, collaborative, and continuous process. So what are the steps of dietary intervention? So here first, what we do assessment of the calories, how much the patient actually takes presently. Determination of anthropometrics like height, weight is done. Based on that, calculation of calories actually recommended that for that person is calculated. Thereafter, a meal plan is made, and definitely the patient is thereafter followed up. So, what should be the amount of carbohydrates in an ideal meal of a diabetic patient? About 50 to 60% of total calorie intake should be carbohydrates. Primary source of complex carbohydrates should be cereals. It's better to avoid simple sugars. 4 to 5 servings of vegetables and fruit should be there daily, and total dietary fiber should be about 25 to 40 gram per day. Here comes the concept of glycemic index and glycemic load, which is very important. So, what is glycemic index? Glycemic index classifies food or meals based on their potential to raise blood glucose levels. It is expressed as a percentage of the response to a standard food or carbohydrate, usually white bread or pure glucose. So, the basic concept of glycemic index is that how fast a food item actually raises your blood sugar. Now, coming to the second concept, that is the concept of glycemic load. So, glycemic load of a food item is the product of the amount of available carbohydrate in that food item or meal and the glycemic index of the food. So, glycemic food load actually is a better concept than glycemic index. In glycemic load, actually, we are assessing how much carbohydrate is actually available in that food item multiplied by the glycemic index of the food. So, if you see this chart, there are certain food items which have got low glycemic index. Low glycemic index if the glycemic index is below 55, 56 to 69 that is of moderate glycemic index, and food items more than 70 glycemic index are classified as high glycemic index food. So definitely those foods are beneficial which have low glycemic index. But now coming to the concept of glycemic load. Glycemic load is considered to be low if it is below 10. 11 to 15 are food items with moderate glycemic load, and more than 20 are the food items having high glycemic load. So from here you can see a food may belong to this category, um, may be having a glycemic index of 50, glycemic index of 50 or 40, which classifies the food item to be having low glycemic index. But when we consider the same food item in terms of glycemic load, it may come under high glycemic load category or moderately high glycemic load category. So, for example, the carbohydrate in watermelon has a high glycemic index, but there isn't a lot of it. There isn't a lot of it. So, watermelon's glycemic load is relatively low. So, carbohydrate in watermelon has got a high glycemic index, but the amount of carbohydrate in watermelon is very low. So, ultimately, the glycemic load is relatively low. The glycemic index ranks foods from 1 to 100 based on how quickly they are digested and get into your bloodstream. The higher the food is ranked, the quicker it raises your blood glucose levels. The glycemic load, on the other hand, takes the amount of carbohydrate in grams in a single serving into account. By including the amount of carbs that you are given a better response of how your body is processing the serving. Glycemic load is therefore more accurate than the glycemic index in predicting how your body will process sugar. Coming to protein intake, daily protein intake should be 1 gram per kg per day. Protein should contribute to about 10 to 15% of the total calorie intake. Fat should contribute less than 30% of the total energy intake per day. Saturated fats should be less than 10% per day. Trans fat intake should be round about 0%. Intake of MUFA is encouraged. and cholesterol intake should be about 200 to 300 milligram per day. So the International Diabetic Federation recommendations for a healthy diet for the general population is somewhat like this. So choosing water, coffee or tea instead of fruit juice, soda or other sweetened beverages is preferred. Eating at least 3 servings of vegetables every day, including green leafy vegetables. Eating up to 3 servings of fresh fruits every day. Choosing nuts, a piece of fresh fruit or unsweetened yogurt for a snack. Limiting alcohol intake to a maximum of 2 standard drinks per day. Choosing lean cuts of white meat, poultry or seafood instead of processed meat. Choosing peanut butter instead of chocolate, spread of jam. Choosing whole grain bread, brown rice or whole grain pasta instead of white bread, rice or pasta. Choosing unsaturated fats like olive oil, canola oil, corn oil or sunflower oil instead of saturated fats like butter, ghee, animal fat, coconut oil or palm oil. Additionally, dietary recommendations of World Health Organization for prevention of type 2 diabetes include limiting saturated fatty acid to less than 10% of total energy intake, and for high risk groups it should be even less than 7%. And achieving the adequate dietary intake of dietary fiber, minimum daily intake should be 20 grams through consumption of whole grain cereals, legumes, fruits and vegetables. World Health Organization strongly recommends reducing the intake of free sugars to less than 10% of total energy intake. So, what are the important points in relation to health education of the diabetic patients? It is the cornerstone of diabetes management. So, it covers self care, changing behavior to prevent and control of complications, encouraging interactions with healthcare providers. So, what do you mean by diabetes self care? The patient should be educated to practice self care. This allows the patient to assume responsibility and control of his or her own diabetes management. Self care should include blood glucose monitoring, body weight monitoring, foot care, personal hygiene, healthy lifestyle, diet, and physical activity, identifying targets of control, stopping smoking. What are the different educational methods you may use? Individual counseling, group teaching, educational materials like posters, pamphlets, books. Special educational programs are needed for special groups such as children and pregnant women. Education of health professionals are also important. Basic understanding of diabetes mellitus and its management, training in educational methods, training of dietetics and nurses, and education of the community is also important through prevention and modification of dietary habits and other lifestyle characteristics that link with diabetes mellitus. Coming to the national program in relation with non-communicable disease, that is the NCPDS, that is the National Program for Prevention and Control of Diabetes, Cardiovascular Disease and Stroke. But what are the objectives of the national program? Screening, case management in primary health center, pre-diabetes detection and lifestyle modification, and awareness generation. So, what are the plan of action in the national program? Guidelines formulation, training of health staffs, detection camps in sub centers and main centers, detection and screening camps at institutions, regular fixed day, weekly non-communicable disease clinic at primary health center, preparation of patient treatment cards, behavioral change communication activities. So, what are the activities being carried out at different healthcare facilities? In tertiary centers, comprehensive care is being given, research, training, telemedicine, all this being are carried out. In district hospital, diagnosis and management of difficult cases, CCU care, dialysis training is going on. In the community health center, early detection and appropriate treatment and health promotion are being given. So, what are the key interventions in the national program? So, health promotion is being done through public awareness through multimedia, counseling for healthy lifestyle, balanced diet, regular exercise to avoid alcohol and tobacco. Early diagnosis is being done through screening of persons of 30 years and all pregnant women for diabetes and hypertension at all levels. Facilities are being provided till up to subcental level. Case management is being done through facilities of diagnosis and treatment at CHC and level and above. CCU care is being given at district hospital and above. Treatment of cancer is being done at district hospital and above. Capacity building through infrastructure development and equipment, training of human resources at all levels. Management and monitoring is being done at NCD cell at national, state and district level. Surveillance, monitoring, evaluation is going on. Regular review meetings are also being carried out. Thank you for your patience hearing.